Today on Anatomy of Movie, we talk about The Legend of Tarzan, the new movie with Alexander Skarsgård. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We have Demetri Panos joining us for the panel today.
Hey, movie fans.
We have Marisa Serafini.
Hello, everyone.
And I'm Phil Svitek. That's right, Legend of Tarzan. And you know what? By the way, a couple of quick things. If you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. If you're a returning customer, welcome back. For those of you returning, you guys know the drill. This is spoiler-filled. We talk production, we talk casting, we talk story, we talk everything. So it's very spoiler-filled. And as always, you can download the rundown in our description, so that way you get all of our notes, because we don't hit every single point. We just kind of draw from it into the discussion. But as always, let's start with overall impressions. Demetri.
Well, you know, going into this movie, the marketing wasn't clicking with me, and I didn't know whether or not I wanted to see it. And I have to say, after watching it, I was pleasantly surprised by this new retelling of The Lord of the Jungle. It's a good throwback type of B movie with a really good cast that never goes over the top. They, for the most part, they just play it straight. And more importantly, they look as if they're having fun doing it. I thought fine direction. It kept the action balanced, story. It kept the story from being a complete cheese. Spelled with a Z, by the ways. And I enjoyed the historical context of in which this movie was set. So Tarzan's come a long way since Meet Tarzan, You Jane, He Cheetah, and I was very happy for it. I thought it was a fine summer popcorn movie.
There you go, Marisa.
Yeah, I pleasantly enjoyed this film a lot more than I thought I was going to. Not that I had low expectations and whatnot, but I really wasn't knowing what to expect. And I walked out of it, I was like, wow, that was a pretty solid film. Visually, it was stunning. I think there was a great balance between action, comedy, and drama, all blended well together in this film. The pacing was great. It didn't feel like a long movie. And overall, it was just a really entertaining film.
I thought the stakes were fantastic, and I liked the fact that this was not a stupid origin story, because I would have hated that, which, I mean, you talked about the marketing. The marketing made me feel like, oh, we're going to watch this kid grow up in the jungle, and what the hell is this really about? To be honest, I had no interest in seeing this movie, and it just blew me away. I thought the marketing did a huge disservice to a fantastic, fantastic movie, and it's quite unfortunate because I do really want this movie to do well. I thought from top to bottom, everyone did a fantastic job. I didn't even know that Samuel L. Jackson was in this movie. He brought the lighter side of it, much like, as villainous as Christoph Waltz is in most of the movies, he has that charm to him, that snake charm.
That's a good way to put it.
And I loved it. And so much, and his pride always get, like, the fact that Margot Robbie's character called him out, the one side of your mustache is lower than the other, and you could see that it just clicks with him. A lot of great stuff, great action scenes. Overall, great movie that I just really hope that if you're watching this because you've seen the movie, spread the wealth, tell other people.
Yeah, hopefully you feel the same way, and it really gives me it's a good pleasure to hear that you folks liked it too, because like you, Phil, I really didn't have much of a great desire to see this. I didn't think that the marketing did a fantastic job. And after watching this movie, I'm like, this is a good summer. This is a good movie to be released in the summer. We have a decent story. Yes, outside of, Christoph Waltz, Margot Robbie, who is great. But you didn't have, you had Sam Jackson, but he wasn't the lead, which is interesting. He's a lead guy, and he's taken a supporting role in a sense. This Skarsgård, he's very good, but not necessarily a marquee name, right? He does a really good job, and action was good. Like you said, Marisa, good balance.
Let's start a little bit backwards, right? Normally we kind of end on the box office and then the reception, but this got a 35 on Rotten Tomatoes. That is just deplorable. How do you give this movie a 35? That's worse than X-Men X3.
Yeah.
Or whatever the hell that title was.
The Last Stand. Yeah, it's super low and that's very super disappointing.
Yeah.
Because, I've been hearing from other people who have also watched this film. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and they didn't. And so I'm hearing a lot of mixed reviews, but I don't think from everyone who said that they didn't like it, it didn't really say anything about like the fact that they had a strong story. Is like they didn't really give a clear answer to what made this film bad and deserving.
One person didn't like CGI. I was
or
really?
Deserving of such a low score.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, that was one of the things that sort of kind of was deterring me in a sense from like really wanting to go see this movie. However, audiences were going out. So for some reason or another, the marketing did hit to some audience. They were going out, and then I had heard that it had gotten an A- on CinemaScore. So it was resonating with the audience. It came in number 2 over a holiday weekend, a 4th of July weekend. But when I look at 35%, I usually say, that's a stinker. That's not that good. And when I saw it, I walked out, and yet it's just another fine example where critics, I think you got, like, what movie are you watching where you felt that this movie deserved a 35%? Some critics I was reading they said, me Tarzan, me disappointed. And I'm like going, really? Like, that's the Tarzan that you wanted? You wanted that me Tarzan? Like, you didn't want just a fun movie that looked good, that was professionally acted, put together well. Like, what movie did you want out of Tarzan?
I mean, he was the Gandhi of Congo. I don't know what other way to kind of really explain it, but the fact, the elements of slavery and the history side of it, because there is, obviously Europeans and like, it's one thing, America obviously has a history with Africa in terms of the slave trade and whatnot, but, very much leading up until World War I, they were trying to colonize Africa, and eventually, like, as most found out, apart from diamonds, there was nothing in Africa to pillage. So
Ivory.
But eventually, most countries were like, "This is what the hell are we doing here?" And it just killed them in debt. And so it was a great notion to it.
And you were using, albeit I'm sure they were abridged and changed for the movie, but you were using real historical people. Like within this movie, Sam Jackson's character, Christoph Waltz's character. Actually, some of the only fictionalized people are Tarzan and Jane. Yeah. But I really appreciated that. I appreciated that aspect of this movie. And again, you had, it was fun. Sam Jackson was fun in this movie. When was the last time where he was fun in a movie? What
was it? The Hateful Eight, maybe?
He was good, but he wasn't fun. It looked like he was truly having a good time doing this.
Yeah, he was definitely the comic relief of this.
Absolutely.
And he wasn't like the villain, which he's also really good at as well, but he was just a supporting character who was literally along for the ride and along for the adventure. But I thought there were moments.
But he had a purpose.
He did, and he grounded the situations that were happening, and he actually ended up being a very valuable asset to all of them. So he did, like you said, he had a purpose there. Even though he was fun, he had a reason to be there.
Yeah, and going in, I didn't know that his character was real. So I see Sam Jackson, and the first thing I said was, I hope it's not they're going to pull the switcheroo where he's actually a bad guy. Because I was going, it would be really cool to actually see him be a good guy. So I'm glad that he stayed that course. And to your point, he was funny. It was great how he had to always keep up with Tarzan. That was good stuff.
Yeah. So I know we've kind of jumped into it, but we'll take one quick step back and then talk story. In terms of development, much like most of these movies that we've been talking about, we just talked about the BFG. It's this wasn't quite the development hell that was, but this has been in production, or it's been discussed for quite a while.
Like a decade.
Yeah, I mean, this
Yeah.
is dating back to 2003. So, various iterations of that. And almost it got up and going in 2013, but there was a lot of debate over budget, as most likely there always is. So much so that, Yates was saying it's been a real struggle to match the vision with money. Though he achieved finally when it went to production in 2014.
Yeah, well, they actually, it was temporarily shut down due to budget, which is interesting because, well, all in all, the budget is, let's see, it's estimated production budget is about $180 million, which means you're looking over a $200 million budget once you start throwing in your hard drives, advertising, and all that. That's a lot of spondulics.
Some people estimate, I don't know if this is 100% true, but they're estimating in order to break even that they need to get to $400 million, which seems a little much for.
It's traditionally, and just the math works out to about 2.5 times your production budget. Mm-hmm. So to break even, that's been the math. Doesn't work for every single movie, obviously, but I don't know where they got funded for this and such, but $180 million. It was a David Yates movie. This guy's coming off of the Harry Potter films.
At this point, the scary part is that's been quite a bit since since that came out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So much so that now we have a ride about it.
Yeah, and so him coming back. This is his first project, so to speak, post Potter, and it was a story that he was interested in telling. He wanted to tell. He felt that the time is right to do a good retelling of this tale, and he more or less started from scratch and coming up with a brand new script, and from a budgetary standpoint. Yeah, there was lots, especially after doing the research and how they filmed this, which I found to be very fascinating. You can see where they went into, where it may have raised the budget. Not going with motion capture, which I don't know if that lessens a budget, but doing every animal, creature completely CGI because they didn't want them to give a humanistic appeal, which I appreciate. Stuff like that. So it just makes me wonder what other visions he had where Warner Brothers had to say, you know what, okay, let's stop right now. We have to figure this out. So I'm wondering what else he may have had that really would have made the budget skyrocket.
I mean, in a way, as grand as it was pretty self-contained in terms of the idea. The idea was simple. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that. And in terms of story, one of the biggest things I liked was that, he refers to himself as John.
Right.
Instead of Tarzan. He's kind of, it's been 8 years, so he's kind of forgotten that side of it. Obviously, it's still part of his history. It's not like he denies it, but he doesn't accept that he is Tarzan.
Right.
And this is almost a coming back story, and all the great things that he might have done, this is what makes him. He was a hero before, now he's a legend, if you will.
Yeah. I like the fact that, we started off the movie with post what happened, or post the story that everyone tends to know. Like, people know how Tarzan and Jane always met, and that's many of the versions out there. It's really just that story, and no one really knows what happens afterwards. And I liked how we started the film after that.
You and me both.
And then I liked how they slowly went back to the Congo, and then we got those flashbacks can be overused, but I felt like the flashbacks were really well done in this film because it was sparse and yet still very informative, and let us know what happened in the past, and we got that backstory too. It was just really well done, and for storytelling as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, and just making a point regarding the flashbacks, apparently test audiences really liked the flashback aspect of the movie, so they actually had more, they cut some out, they put a little more in because to appease what the test audience was saying. I too like the framing device of this takes place after, Tarzan's back in the he's in the modern world of the time. He's the heir of Greystoke. He and Jane are married, and they have their lives. And I did like that plot point of what would it take to get him back to the Congo, because he really sort of he was resisting that urge. But there were some really cool scenes while he was back, around Greystoke, like where we do learn about how his bone structure in his hand. Like, that was never really fully explained that I can ever recall, like how it changed because he was brought up using this, and he would, and I liked how they used that with the kids and how they talked to him about what it was like to be Tarzan. And you get, wow, he sort of is like a superhero to these kids without the mask, but his bone structure, like, think about like a Marvel thing. His bone structure is different. Yeah, it's adamantium, but his bone structure had to change. It was a nurture versus nature environment that he was being brought up in. And when he goes back, I liked when he went back. His village was so accepting of him and stuff.
And the reason why the flashbacks to me work really well is the fact that they're triggered by something that's happening, and you don't just go to him for no reason.
Right.
When you look out and he like, for example, when he sees Jane, well, he's reminded of the first time he sees her, and it's in juxtaposition with, you're kind of building that because he doesn't want her to go back knowing how dangerous it actually is. And so it draws those memories of like, oh, here's our beginning and here's why we left ultimately. Yeah. So it works well in that way to further the plot rather than just like, oh, here's a bunch of exposition.
Right.
Yeah. I like the convention of, we talked about it in our past anatomies shows, but just Jane in general, because we had the legendary story of Tarzan and Jane, but sure. Jane, even now, contemporary Jane, is like very strong woman. Yep. And Hollywood's actually getting better at building strong female characters, and I think Margot Robbie is an excellent actress to play such a person. So Jane could be the damsel, but she wasn't in this film, and I enjoyed that. It was a different take on Jane. Yeah,
and to take it a step further too, Margot Robbie refused to lose weight for the role, which I found very fascinating. Still a great. And
what weight does she have to lose, though?
Exactly.
She's already gorgeous, and the fact that what more do you want from her?
Yeah, I wouldn't understand that either. But you're right. She wasn't. She herself, the character says,
like a damsel.
Yeah, like a damsel. She goes, no, you're Jane. Tarzan's gonna come for you, and she wouldn't give the guy the satisfaction, and she stood up to the guy. Yes, ultimately, Tarzan and crew come to the rescue, but not due to her being inappropriate or unable to help herself. She was a very able character. In fact, she said, I want to come to the Congo. She goes, don't worry. She goes, I'll be with this. I'll be safe. And it took Tarzan or it took John just time to think about it and go, of course, I'm going to have you come out there, and because you'll be reunited with family too.
Well, then I think he also understood that he didn't have a choice. She's that strong. She's going to do it one way or the other. Might as well just be with me rather than lie.
Yep. Listen to your woman.
Yep.
Again, I like how it went against that convention or stereotype of what you would expect of a female in comparison to having a strong male.
Right. Yep. No, I agree. Go ahead.
Well, one of the things too, that I enjoyed about this movie was that, going back to the flashbacks, just in general, the way they knew when to tell information. So when we open up at first, when the movie opened up, I was like, wait, what was missed? How much of the movie haven't I seen yet? Because you're kind of thrown into it, and it just kind of goes from there. And, then you're kind of playing catch up for the rest of the movie. And once you figure out those certain elements, right, even down to the whole reason why that chief is actually after Tarzan and why there's such a big bounty on Tarzan, then it holds weight and you're like, oh wow, okay. I get it. And it came in at the right times.
And to your point, when you said at the top of the show, and you too, Marisa, as well, when we're talking, this isn't your typical origin story, right? like, I like the way it was presented to us. I didn't need a 2+ hour movie showcasing the fact that he killed this tribe chief's son because he shot the mother. I got it in just the dose that I needed to understand the story, and I'm already on in this story and how that all perpetuates and why we are where we're at with this retelling of Tarzan. I thought the script worked. It worked well for an action adventure movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were only a couple storylines that we did have to follow, but it wasn't confusing in any way. They all interlaced with each other pretty well and interconnected, but they were all wrapped up too. They all had the resolutions at the end, and that goes for, you know, very satisfying ending too, because everything was completed in full.
Yeah, and for example, Sam Jackson's George Washington Williams story. I mean, I found, and again, not knowing that he was a real character in history, but I just found it interesting that he was, on behalf of the states, he was there on a fact-finding mission. It was that's what I like too, post-Civil War, in which he was a soldier and he saw some not nice things. It was a really good conversation that I had with Tarzan. And to find out that he's there, we believe that slavery is coming back. And it's coming in the Congo, and we have to, he goes, I'm just here as a fact-finding thing. He goes, that's why I need you to go. So I like that whole, you know, Tarzan and slavery whole deal. And it led for a really cool sequence and fight scene on the train. That was really good, right?
That was a really good scene. It played well. Absolutely.
That was awesome.
Yeah, and I like that fact of it, and you know, he was able to find evidence, and you know, it's always one of those scary. The fact that something like this could have been hidden for so long, you know, and you got to applaud the fact that Christoph Waltz plays the villain in this regard, and he plays it so well. You know, I between. Because he's not like a typical, he's a over-the-top villain, but he's not in the stereotypical where he's got muscle or this and that. He just has his brain power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I love Christoph Waltz. I think he's a really strong actor as well. I liked how he portrayed this villain because it was cold, subdued, and mysterious in a way, and you couldn't tell. I mean, obviously we couldn't trust him, but like you could tell he was very calculated, and you never knew what he was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, with me, Christoph Waltz made his bones in *Inglourious Basterds*. So he won the Academy Award, did he not, for that movie?
I think so.
I thought, you know, he was brilliant in that movie as a Nazi.
That was for Django. Maybe not.
Well, in Django, at least he played a guy on the morally right side of the compass. Yeah. Let's just say. Mm-hmm. But since, you know, I mean, he's played a lot of bad guys. You know, I mean, we just recently saw him as a bad guy. He was Blofeld in Spectre. He's the villain in Tarzan. He was the villain in Horrible Bosses 2. I'd like to see him. I'd like for somebody to find a role where he's not necessarily a bad guy. You know, he's good to see, but I was like, you're always playing the bad guy. I want to see you do. I want to see.
Scenes where he's just eating,
yeah,
and filled with dialogue. I don't know. Like I think that's the only scenes he. Like if that's all he had to do for the rest of his life, he would nail every single one of them.
Yeah, you're right. My favorite part in Tarzan, in Legend of Tarzan, was when he's having dinner with Margot Robbie, and he calls in the Goonies to come in and say, you know, Jane is done with her meal. She gets up into parts. He looks over and he fixes her fork and knife, and it's like, oh, that's not anal retentive. You know, yeah. I was like, but that was a great touch.
But he's also what I appreciate. He's very competent, right? The fact of, because you would wonder, okay, yes, he's got power and he's got people behind him, but he himself, like, if Tarzan just took one swing at him, this guy would be down. But his whole necklace and the fact that he knew history and this and that, you know, made him a worthy adversary.
That scene that's within the first quarter of the movie, when he's trying to find Opa, the location of these diamonds, and the entire army that's behind him, gets taken out by this tribe. Okay? He's the only one that's left standing. So it's him, those people, they start to come at him, and he takes this one guy out. Because before that, you were just assuming he was he was just mapping everything out, but he didn't have the wherewithal to, like, fight because he didn't show it. Even the tribesmen were like, whoa, okay. And he goes, oh, you must be Chief, you must be the chief.
Chief Mumbanga.
And he's like, who's asking? He goes, oh, well, I'm so-and-so. And yeah, I thought that scene was a great scene. Because that's the way he's like, what did you call him? Like you called him at the beginning like a snake.
Like a villainous snake. I forget at this point. You'd have to rewind. I don't know.
Checking and play back.
He was subtle, and that's the thing. He was very subtle, but even a simple character, really, or when you play it down, simplicity goes a long way.
And that's what I said too at the top. Somebody could have taken that role and just overplayed it, just to chew up the scenery, okay? Which could have been entertaining, but not necessary for this movie. And that's what I appreciated. None of the actors, including Sam Jackson or Jane, nobody overplayed their part. Nobody chewed up the scenery to say, hey, look at me, I'm having so much fun. That to me helped make this movie work. You didn't have a cartoonish villain.
No, and his drive, whether you agree with it or not, at least it was justifiable in the sense that he was a guy who had nothing, and now, to be at least in Belgium, to say like, hey, I rose from nothing and got this, versus, John/Tarzan, he was always going to return to his home, and that was his home.
Yeah.
He was a blue blood, versus this is, in some ways you can call it the American dream. From nothing, get something.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, in some ways weirdly admirable.
Sure.
Just not in the right way.
Yeah.
Not going about it.
Or in some ways, kind of realistic or relatable.
Sure.
More so. Because a lot of people can start from nothing, but really pick themselves up and make something out of it.
Well, he did. He was a villain, too, that had a plan. He wasn't just King Leopold's lackey. He was going to be remembered for doing what he did and finding these diamonds, and, which was interesting as well. He in a sense, he was a pre-dawn Bond villain, which is ironic because he played a Bond villain as well. But, he had a master plan for himself. As for how he was going to be viewed in history.
Yeah, and at the beginning of the film, when they're first establishing his character and they gave him the diamonds, I couldn't tell if he was a power thirsty kind of villain, or just a financially gold digger kind of villain who's just in it for the money.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the more and more movies I see like this, I'm just like, why the fuck do we like these dumb rocks? Why do they hold so much stupid value?
Right.
God damn people. You and your fucking diamonds.
Go ahead. Try to get engaged without one.
Good. I don't need to. I will say this. The woman that will have me without having to get a diamond, that's the woman I want. Anything less, piss off.
There you go.
Wow.
So there's my rant of the...
Well, those were big rocks.
They were huge.
I don't know. Again, it's the political side of me. It's just that's part of me hopes, and I think that this is why they're underscoring it. Hence why the movie Blood Diamond came out, is like, why we're really fighting for this. It's that big. What does it get you? It doesn't feed you. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't even look that good to me.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway,
Steve also agrees with you.
From the booth.
I like the fact that, yes, we did have diamonds, but the whole movie wasn't centered around that. It was just a little factor that was added to it. It wasn't
that was the twist. You're right.
Yeah,
I mean, because
it wasn't a sole thing that they were after.
Yeah, the grand scheme of things was this whole slavery thing.
Yeah.
Which and colonization, it was well above. I mean, the diamonds were only to fund, like Leopold had been
to get out of debt,
bankrupt, and the twist comes. It was a lot bigger than these diamonds, and our our villain, right now I forget. Brom. He knew there were even more diamonds. It was above and beyond just the 3. And what do we do with slave trade more? Yeah, it was this whole thing, which again, I like that aspect of the story. Because it is, it does historically, there's historical context to it, which I'm sure there were liberties taken. But still, for anybody who's watching, and even for me while researching, I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. I mean, there's real.
Obviously, today with America, obviously we're very politically charged in that way. But I do think I liked how it was presented, and I hope that Americans that do see that realize that it's very much a part of our history. Whether or not, again, you could say like, oh, I wasn't involved, I wasn't born there, or maybe that's not in my family, but it is American history, and you need to accept that that is part of our very horrible history. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's we can come to that will not have so much violence in today's day and world.
Well, hopefully, and going back to the historical context too. So, you had a real historical villain during the late 1800s. Leopold ruthlessly exploited the Congo for its rubber crop, resulting in mass enslavement and genocide. Modern estimates put the number of Congolese deaths attributable to his regime specifically in the millions. With this as a context, you can hardly accuse the film of romanticizing colonialism. And then Yates goes on to say, obviously it's a big, exciting action film. And Alexander Skarsgård explains, but this is the reality that Tarzan comes back to in the Congo, an appalling situation that wasn't there when he was growing up. To your point at the beginning of the show, the movie had stakes. It had stakes. And even though it was a ruse getting him out to the Congo, once he's out there and he's seeing what's going on, he realizes that he can do his part to help. Again, it wasn't just a silly reason for him
to be there,
to stay there. So
yeah, and in some ways, what I think the turn for him too was that he does feel bad because he prematurely did leave, and at the end he realizes that he needs to be the protector of this place and really be the legend that people have always made him out to be, because no one else will do it.
Yeah,
in a sense.
I also found it fascinating that we never see this Leopold on screen at all.
No.
He's only discussed. He's only talked about. We have Leon Rom as being, our main visual villain who's carrying out all the dirty work. And believe it or not, Rom himself is thought to be an inspiration for the brutal Mr. Kurtz in Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, which, when you talk about colonization, that's what Heart of Darkness is really about, and what Kurtz just goes off the deep end and setting up his colony, so to speak. Very interesting when I read about that, and you can see the parallels.
Absolutely.
About that was cool.
Indeed. Well, I want to go back to Tarzan because the one thing that all three of us had just surplus research on is his physique.
Crazy.
I mean, there is an article that you can read on the internet about Tarzan that doesn't talk about the preparation that Alexander Skarsgård went for this role.
I mean, that's serious dedication. We've talked about it in other films where people have had to get in shape for their roles.
Right.
Like, we had Creed with Michael B. Jordan.
Right.
And we had Jake Gyllenhaal.
Sure.
In his film. So
even Chris Evans as Captain America.
Right. And so it's always fascinating what these guys have to put themselves through. Like, very strict diet. He was on 8 months of no sugar, no dairy products, no alcohol.
7,000 to 8,000 calories a day.
Every 3 hours he had to have a meal, like, on the dot. Like, that's serious commitment.
Yeah. Well,
and
he
like
is
a
getting
lot
paid.
But like a lot of willpower too. But just dedication to actually looking the part. And Alexander said in multiple interviews, it's not just having the physique, but also making him look like he was actually athletic and he grew up in the jungle, like, instead of just the shape. Right. That he had the ability.
Yeah, one of the interviews I saw, just Just when he goes, yeah, I'm naturally thin. Yeah, F you. He goes, I actually had to put on weight. And I'm like, yeah, it's too bad. So, but, you know, you're right. The rigorous amount of time spent, caloric workout, we hear about this all the time, whether it's Daisy Ridley working out and how to sword fight and things like that and what they have to do to stay physically fit. But yeah, I mean, he played the part. You know, some people, and I don't get it with the critics, I thought his interpretation of Tarzan was fine. People said he was too stoic. And we're like, what are you wanting from him? I mean, I thought he was fine. I thought he was good.
I thought he was great, and you know, he also took on the role to impress his father because his father was a big Tarzan fan. His little brother, you know, he was a Tarzan fan, and his only fear was like, I didn't want to be the world's shittiest Tarzan.
Yeah, and
especially to the brother.
Yeah, I mean, that's great for him to take on that kind of role for, you know, father's love.
Absolutely.
But also just the story of Tarzan himself. He was a person who grew up in the jungle. He didn't really have the human, you know, connection. He wasn't properly educated how to socialize with people. So you got to remember, like, he's not going to be the most communicative person. He doesn't have those social skills. So do you want him to be the most loquacious, fun guy? It's like, no, he's not going to be that. So I think Alexander did a great job being like a very serious, maybe he was stoic at moments, but like a very straightforward, serious person.
Yeah, he was fine, and I really enjoyed the times together with Margot Robbie. I enjoyed his partnering up with Sam Jackson because that relationship warmed up. And again, I thought it was a great button at the end of the movie when he's like, you didn't really think I was going to do that. Like, you know, and I thought that's funny recall, and he's gaining the sense of humor. I really enjoyed that as well.
Speaking of him and Margot Robbie, David Yates asked Margot to punch Alexander while directing their sex scene. Yates says, it's an earthy moment of her enjoying sex with Alex, so I told her, just slap Alex while you're making love, give him a punch. So Skarsgård said David wanted it to be primal and animalistic, so he egged us on.
And she did.
Did indeed.
And there were other interviews also saying that Margot gets like really, really into the roles and like very committed into the performance and whatnot, and that's to break up, you know, that kind of heat of the moment, so to speak. It's more so like, you know, let's have fun a little bit.
Yeah, and apparently that was like one of the only bruises that he recorded throughout the entire filming. He got beat up by a girl, which is awesome.
Hey, don't mess with Mark.
But good for her too.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it just goes back to I really got the sense that they were having, that the chemistry worked, and they were having a good time making this movie. I thought that really came across very well. The other thing that I was very surprised about, but after reading about it, I thought it was really cool, is that they didn't use motion capture for anything. Every animal that was in the movie was computer generated. I thought they looked really cool, but David Yates wanted to stay away. He didn't want to give the animals humanistic attributes. Yeah. And I think it really worked. I believed the apes. You know, there were some really cool scenes. Okay, if you want to nitpick, yes, there were probably some scenes in which you can tell that they were CG. But I could point to Jungle Book and say the same thing, even though it's a far better movie, don't get me wrong. But, you know, you know that it's CG, unless it looks like South Park animation. You know, you gotta be a little bit forgiving considering all that was in this movie. And I thought that the animals, especially the apes, were as much character.
Oh, absolutely.
As our human counterparts.
I think they did a great job of showing just how scary and menacing the jungle can be with all the different animals. Like the elephants can be gorgeous, the hippos can be scary as, you know, and even the gorillas. Don't mess with them because Disney gotta hand it to them. You know, Disney Tarzan animation, great film, and I feel like a lot of people of my generation probably grew up with that and knew like gorillas can be friendly, they can be they can sing to you and then be friendly and nurturing. And like this was so not the case.
Yeah.
These gorillas were scary. You did not want to pick a fight with them, even though they did. But like completely animal, you don't want to connect with them as humans.
Yeah, and at the same time too, it was they weren't Planet of the Apes. You get that sense, but they weren't walking and talking. Like they were on their their hind legs. They were using their forelegs to walk around, using their sounds. They would beat people. The scene, that flashback scene too, I thought was very well handled, where Tarzan saves Jane. And he took the thrashing, the thrumping, so to speak. I thought that was very well done. And again, I did get a sense like I knew his brother, that the father that hated him for being the human in the camp, but they gave them distinguishing marks enough so that we knew when he was coming back. Yeah. And I like that. It was smart.
And I like the way Tarzan explained it. Of like, he thinks I'm a traitor.
Yeah.
Which you saw they built up that bond really well. And then it makes sense. Well, yeah, you left.
Yeah. You left us, and again, just going back to the creatures, I like they did their research as well. They did they were at wildlife parks. They were photo scanning real animals. They got their traits down, and I found that to be pretty cool. And it worked in this movie. Worked really well.
I agree, and not only did they not use real animals, it was way cheaper to not shoot in Africa. So they did not shoot in Africa.
They didn't, but there were parts that they did, but here's what I thought was really clever.
Through a helicopter.
I didn't even. Again, good for them, because there were scenes that were on the boat that took place in a tank, but they took the footage that they shot up against. Usually you can tell when when they're using blue screen or green screen to show. It's the olden days of movie making where they're driving the car and the movie's playing behind them.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell. When I read about that, I was like, that's cool, because I had no way of knowing.
Yeah, no, they were seamless.
Yeah.
Absolutely seamless.
I felt so. The sets that they built had to be pretty cool, because I actually thought they did something there, but, it was
cool. I mean, overall, they did. They were fascinated by Africa, and so they filmed a lot of plates, as they call them.
Right.
They would take the helicopter out and just film whatever they could, and made it look. I mean, if nothing else, what I loved, the jungle was just so luscious. And when it was raining, when it was sunny, this and that, it was the tone. They captured it really well.
Yeah, well, apparently, too, so in about 2012, Warner Brothers sent their scouts out to cross Africa at the equator to look for locations. And David Yates, he said he was so amazed by the image of apparently it's Gabon. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. That he hopped on a plane to see things for himself. And he said for 4 days, David sat with his nose pinned to the window, his new project rendering in real time in front of him. The Gabon National Parks team flew him over most of the remote parts of the ancient forest where the canopy breaks for immense granite. Sorry about that. Don't know what's going on, why I'm dinging. On the return home, he rewrote the script to include the incredible features he had seen. And the mere fact that they were able to photo capture those plates, use them in a soundstage, and have it seamless, hey, that's movie magic. And another good reason to see this movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's so well done. You wouldn't really think it, because also I think the action and the story is so compelling that you also kind of forget what you're watching, because you're just so sucked in and, love everything that's going on. And I think it was just so well done. If their plates and whatever footage they shot, it was just, like you said, seamless. And I think it shows how good the movie is, that you're so engrossed in it that you don't even realize it.
Well, here's something else cool, too. They made a specially made mount for six high-resolution cameras were built to capture an incredible 160-degree panorama that end up on film. And, they had Fred North flew the director of photography, Henry Barham, hour upon hour in search for the perfect moment. So on 160 degrees, I think that's six of these high-resolution cameras. Yeah, I mean, it really led to an authenticity, I think, in this movie. That's really cool. It's a good story point you talk about.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you guys. And by the way, the cinematographer is named
Henry Braham.
That's right. Did Golden Compass, Nanny McPhee, and Flyboys.
Yeah. And again, it was shot, most of it was at Warner Brothers Cutting Edge Studio at Lewiston. And
Margot Robbie enjoyed one of the sets that they were on was the former Hagrid's Hill from Harry Potter.
Yep.
And Margot Robbie got a kick out of that.
now, if it's the same studios that I'm thinking of, they do. I was there when I was in England. They have an amazing Harry Potter tour.
Oh,
like,
I bet they must, yeah.
amazing. Like, I walked into the Great Hall. And, of course, David Yates, he's pretty steeped in the history of Harry Potter himself.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. In fact, I found a lot of things interesting. I didn't realize he actually left in while they were doing a lot of post work, so he could go start Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. But he's a busy guy. Busy guy, this David Yates.
Yeah.
I can imagine. Absolutely. So we've kind of talked about the other visual effects stuff. Marisa, do you want to add to that? Might as well talk about it. There's...
So, we mentioned the gorillas and the fighting.
Yeah.
Even though, yes, they were all animated and whatnot, they said for the filming aspect of it, sometimes they would have guys in suits just so they can get the placement for the eye line. And then also it was like tennis balls on C-stands. That's what they had to look at. And Alexander Skarsgård said in interviews sometimes it was hard for him emotionally to act because he's trying to... connect with this baby elephant that he grew up with and or knew his whole life and whatnot, right. And he's really talking to a tennis ball.
Yeah.
Listen, if Tom Hanks can get emotional with the volleyball, it could be done.
He's paid to act. He's paid to act. That's what he does. That is one thing of this story that I thought, again, it was so briefly mentioned. It was so briefly brought up. I thought there was going to be more to it, but it was the ivory poaching. And you saw, I believe it was trains or the carts that had all the tusks.
Yeah.
And then they had that majestic scene with the elephants, which again, it sort of kind of brought me back to Jungle Book. Remember that? Remember those amazing scenes with the elephants?
Yeah.
But I liked how he said it's in the eyes. It's in the eyes, that they can say more with their eyes than you and I can ever say in words, or something to that effect. And I thought that was a very majestic scene that they came across that herd of elephants. Now, I wish that there was, that could have been another good story, but...
I think we saw enough.
Did you? And because it was hinted at. I just,
a little bit. I think what I liked about...
be in the sequel.
If we get one. What I liked about all the animal interactions is that they felt... real and authentic. Like, this is how you would act this is how you would behave when you're with gorillas. You bow down and expose all your vulnerable parts. Like, who would know that?
Right.
Or this is how you act with elephants and show reverence and whatnot. I felt like every look, because they were going everywhere in this jungle. I did like that. But, like, everywhere they went, you learned a little bit more about, like, who Tarzan was just via the interactions he had with different animals.
Yeah. Yeah, he truly was Lord of the Jungle. He could, in a sense, Dr. Dolittle with these animals. He got their sense. And we also learned about the hippopotamus. When you see a hippopotamus, you run. But I got that from the Jungle Cruise in Disney, actually.
They're
And
scary beasts.
that was also a good setup at the very beginning when she's talking to the kids about what hippos do. I was like, that's going to play a part, and sure enough, it did. So, and even like the bird calls. Even like during that flashback, and we know that Tarzan can mimic a lot of animals' noises. I was like, that's pretty fascinating too.
Hey, you can talk to the alligators.
He can.
I mean, that was a really good scene as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, he earns the moniker of Lord of the Jungle, and all that stuff was a lot of fun, and I think it brings Tarzan back. I thought this movie brought Tarzan back in a really decent way. That I was like, why not? Like, why shouldn't this movie make more money? It's not. I don't. he's not your typical superhero, but he definitely has superpowers.
That's what I appreciated about it in that way. He had to figure out his own way. It's something slightly different. We've seen, you could say the vine swing is similar to what we've seen with Spider-Man, but you know what? It's a whole new environment. We've seen New York before. The jungle, not so much. And ultimately, he had to devise his own plan in all of this, and it worked.
But, to your point, adding to that, this is where I think that the movie succeeds. I was so afraid that they were going to make this, they were going to bring Tarzan into the concrete jungle, right? Like, how do you modernize this? How do you modernize a character that was invented in, say, 1912, right? Ooh, well, let's bring him into the city. We'll have him swing off telephone pole wires or whatever. But they stayed true, and I also, like, when you heard that Tarzan yell, too, that was great. And I loved how they made it guttural, where even Christoph Waltz's character goes, not exactly the way I thought it was going to sound. And I thought that was a brilliant line, because it wasn't the way I go, oh, that's cool. That's like got a growl to it.
I like their self-awareness of that also. Even David Yates said in interviews that for the iconic Tarzan yell, yes, they recorded Alexander doing it, but they added a lot of different sound effects into it, and they mixed a lot of sounds to get an original kind of sound to such an iconic sound that we've heard 1.5 million times.
Yeah. And I felt that the tree swinging, okay, yes, you could figure out
Digital.
that it's digital. that Alexander Skarsgård was not swinging around trees, but I thought that they did a pretty decent job. Like the leaping onto the train scene, I thought was really well done. I thought it was handled fine. I thought it looked fine. You can nitpick the hell out of almost any CG thing.
Yeah, I believe that
bother me.
when they all take the leap of faith, if jumping off that cliff, and there's Sam Jackson's character, like, what the hell am I doing? Those were great moments. And in terms of, I didn't see it in 3D, but when they're running along the trees and seeing the depth below them, and the fact that they don't have an inkling of fear, and they're just doing this versus, like, then again you come back to Sam Jackson's character, which I imagine most of us would be like, whoa, this is pretty high up. Where's the railing?
What was it? There was something you had said earlier about again with Tarzan. I just forget what I was going to say. Sorry about that. I just had a brain fart.
Well, all good. Unless don't have a Whizzy Pop.
I don't have a Whizzy Pop.
Check out our BFG show just for that. Well,
it was fun seeing them run everywhere, because you can see, even though that Tarzan was removed from the jungle for 8 years, it still never left him.
No, and you know what? He never really left the jungle. Actually, some of my favorite scenes were when he was coming back to his village. And, it was just so accepting. It was such a nice, you can see why. There was a nurturing, loving, caring environment. And you instantly bonded with these people, so that when peril comes their way, you know that they could fend for themselves to an extent, but you didn't want anything really bad to happen with these people. And they could fight, too. So Tarzan bringing them into the fray, so to speak, it was, it was a really cool addition to them following the Lord of the Jungle. And they did it for family purpose, as well as saving this village and saving the slaves. Yeah, it's I don't know. These are all these heroic, adventurous things that I enjoy going to the movies for when they're done well.
Yeah,
I agree. Absolutely. Mark Day is the editor. He's also worked with David Yates on Harry Potter. He also recently did Ex Machina, a movie that I know you both loved.
Great.
Absolutely.
Very fantastic movie. So I thought, overall, like, it comes in under 2 hours. Mm-hmm. So it tells its story very efficiently.
Yeah, I mean, they never lost the pace for me. And also just the idea of there was constant movement. We didn't stay in one location for like less than an hour. And but I enjoyed that because we felt like we were along for the ride with them, because even though they were all in different locations, can still understand what's happening, and they're all going to meet up at one point, which I felt helped with the momentum of the story. As everything was progressing, they were physically moving forward, so was the story.
Yeah, and I got a sense, too, that the movie gave us a good geography by having Margot Robbie over here. They're chasing after her. We know where the village was, you know, and then we're coming into the city or township, so to speak, you know, by the docks. Yeah. I got a good sense of the jungle and where we were and all the miles that had to be traversed, which makes it even funnier for Sam Jackson's character.
I mean, they did it really well, you know, because we get you're right, Christoph Waltz Rom, he shows us what the Congo really is, and then to see Tarzan just kind of draw a line in the sand of, okay, here's the river, here's the way we're going, like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I don't need to overcomplicate it in terms of, okay, we're going to cut through this jungle, and it's called this, and then just, nope, the river goes this way, we're cutting this way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's it.
And you have to keep up.
Yeah. That's all that was.
Not slowing down for you.
Yep.
So let's talk about soundtrack. Rupert Gregson Williams, known for Over the Edge, B-Movie, Click, and Hotel Rwanda. Hotel Rwanda being the more serious tone work that he's done.
That's a great movie as well. The music was great, especially during the fight scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I always point out when I notice it, but like those moments when it was like either with his brother Gorilla or when they were all fighting the chief, the Kuba tribe, or not actually it's not the Kuba tribe that they were fighting. It was when they were being taken over.
Right.
It was like there was actually, if you think about it, there were some intense moments.
Sure.
And like really elevated that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the music was pretty good, and to your point too, with the fight scenes, I gotta ask this: like, was there any moment that you actually thought Tarzan was gonna beat his brother? I mean, for like 2 seconds at the beginning when they were going like in slow motion, which again, sometimes slow motion you go, oh, this is stupid, but I really liked how they charged each other, and for maybe a fraction of a second, I said, oh yeah, he's gonna win, but then I'm like. Nah, he's not going to win. No. And I sort of liked how he didn't.
I like that he didn't. I thought maybe, you know, he could pull just the same way Mowgli, right? He wasn't a wolf, and he pulled in human elements. You know, Tarzan was trying to be an ape, and if he pulled in, like, human elements, I don't know. But that was the way that I saw him winning.
I'm glad he lost, but I did like what the fight established, just a sense of family that's been broken, disloyalty, now earning respect or gaining that respect again, and it also just added like for a fun action scene.
Yeah, it was a good action
there
scene.
Was immediate levity right afterwards. He's pummeled on the ground and he's making jokes.
Yeah.
So I think again that goes back to there was a good balance between action and comedy and drama.
Well, it also helped that the brother. I thought like this was someone's gonna have to die. You know what I mean? I thought because in typically you have to fight for your place and then whoever wins
challenged, right?
You know, but this was enough for the brother of like knowing like, okay, listen, we can keep this all day, but you're gonna lose every single time, and I don't want to kill you.
I was almost thinking that, or actually not almost thinking. I was thinking that Tarzan went into this fight knowing that A, it was something that he was going to have to do, and B, that he was more than likely going to lose. You know, just because his brother had the pure strength and brute behind him, but he knew that he had to do it just for that, as you said, that respect. He had to, like, he was coming back. He had to stand up for himself, and even though he lost, and the brother was like, he even gave him the nod, and he walked away. And then the brother comes back in a big way to help save the day, too. Great
so
scene.
help build up something for later on, too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's good stuff.
I agree.
It's a good movie. Yeah, 35%. What are you doing, critics? What?
I don't know.
I don't know what movies you're watching.
I don't know. Part of the promotion, Alexander went to the MTV Movie Awards, and he said, "Meet Tarzan. I got to give the fans a little skin." So, you know, he nodded to the fact that, yes, he has his shirt off for a lot of the movie. does that turn, I don't know, are most of the critics just males that just don't like Alexander Skarsgård with a shirt off? Like, what's going on?
He's supposed to. I mean, it wasn't as if it were exploitive and or gratuitous.
They didn't have the loincloth.
No.
I'm glad they did it.
All I can tell you is this particular person that I saw the movie with can be quoted as saying, hubba hubba, many a time watching him. And I said, oh, I'm going to go get some more popcorn.
I don't blame them.
There you go.
Hey, like I said, I didn't find it to be exploitive at all or overly gratuitous. It's Tarzan. It's Tarzan. He's,
I mean, as muscle-bound as he, at the end of the day, he's not like the typical muscle-bound people that... He's not gorilla-esque. They could have gone that route and really just, like, roided him up and whatever.
No.
He's not.
No. But he couldn't be that way. I mean, he had to be so much life to be able to swing, to be able to garner the speed or to run through the jungle the way he did and have that stamina. I thought the physique was perfect for that role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And I didn't find him to be, like, model-esque either.
No,
like,
it was, like, physical stature and, like, physical presence that even if you take John Clayton in London, he had a presence to him.
Yes.
And you take him in the jungle, he still had a presence in a different form.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. And we didn't need a loincloth because I liked even his clothing kind of got not so much modernized, but it's more contemporary with what we would see in today's storytelling.
Sure.
On a side note, I love the introduction of Samuel L. Jackson's character. Because you don't know who he is, and obviously he's the only black man, and he's segregated on his own section.
Right.
And he's, in a way, almost doing, like, housework chores, because he's, whatever, the walnuts or the...
Yeah.
And then you find out, no, he's just eccentric.
Yeah.
So...
He's an eccentric on a fact-finding spy mission. Sort of, kind of.
Yeah.
And he has to, and he gets the help of Tarzan. And actually, I think that's probably why Tarzan, as soon as he heard slavery, it's like, could that be going on back in my Congo? Like, could that be going on in my home? I have to check this out with him. So, and again, I do like how that relationship evolved. So, and Sam Jackson, too, took the role because he, too, is a big Tarzan fan. I felt that there was much love going into this production, and probably one of the best film adaptations. Like, it's far better than, Legend of Greystoke and even the Bo Derek erratic Tarzan movie that came out in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
You had the Disney Tarzan, which is Disney Tarzan. It's fun.
Friendly.
Yeah.
Marisa had a quick trivia thing. There are more than 200 movies in entertainment with the title Tarzan in it.
Yep.
That's a lot of... Talk about franchise.
Yeah, but if you think about it, like, I think that's what makes this film good and actually stand out and memorable, because there's so many iterations out there, but, like, this one actually tells it in a really great way with strong actors, strong stories, and just visually how they showed it and pieced it together. It's like, what's not to love of this movie?
Edgar Rice Burroughs himself, the author, he created Tarzan. Edgar Rice Burroughs alone wrote more than 40 novels and short stories about the Lord of the Jungle between 1912 and 1947. There were other authors who later wrote even more. There were comics, cartoons, stage plays, radio serials, and there were movies. So, yeah, and then, Johnny Weissmuller was the guy that made him popular in the 30s. I remember the Tarzan television show with, I believe it was Ron Ely. Somebody would have to look that up, but I believe he played Tarzan on TV, and that had to have been in, like, the 60s or so. The other good thing about this movie, too, is it didn't have Cheetah. Like, and maybe some people, like, there was no, like, lovable chimpanzee to save the day or whatever. Yeah, there's no Cheetah. So, and again, I did, like, me Tarzan, you Jane.
But a different take.
Yeah,
it didn't need it. It didn't need that me Tarzan, you Jane. I like they gave that Jane was feisty and an independent woman. So it was good stuff.
100% agree. Obviously you can have sequels off of this, but Will we get one? It'll depend on the box office, which as of now, not very strong. It was projected to make 25 to 33 million in its opening weekend. It did just above, well, not quite. Opening weekend, it did above that.
It did 38. Yeah, it did 38. I mean, thus far, domestically, it's done about 60.7 million. Worldwide, it's at like 80. It'll be interesting to see, its legs. Another movie that on CinemaScore got an A-. So audiences were really being drawn and really enjoying this movie as well. We'll see if they continue to give it the love in the second, third, and fourth week. Again, with a $180 million price tag on it, I don't know.
They got a ways to go.
They do, and again, I said this too about Warner Brothers. There was a time when they had such a crack team marketing movies. I don't think they put their best foot forward for a movie that was opening up on a 4th of July weekend.
No.
Like, it needed to look bigger to get those audiences out there. It bested a Steven Spielberg movie. We can say that. It came in second only to a movie that's been reigning at the box office, The Finding Dory. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't know how you market it better other than perhaps if they had showcased some of the action. Give more Sam Jackson, for crying out loud.
I think that, and show the stakes of all of it.
Yeah.
The fact that, again, that he's going back, I think it solves two things. One, show Sam Jackson. You mentioned the great scene where they're going back and forth of like their slavery in Africa, and that triggers him to go back. And then boom, you know what? After that, throw whatever images that you want, but you get the story. He's going back and he's fixing this.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Any last final thoughts before we wrap out?
We talked a little bit about the production. I always love when it looks pretty and lighting and whatnot.
Absolutely.
I loved the different tones, the different feels for what was London world and what was
the jungle,
the Congo.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because even John Clayton in London, it was so blue and stark and kind of saturated.
Right.
And you can tell that that wasn't his home. That wasn't welcoming.
Right.
It was very kind of dark and dreary.
Yeah.
And you can tell that Tarzan didn't really belong there. He lived there. He didn't belong there. But the minute we went back to the Congo, the minute we went back to Africa, it was warm and luscious and sunny. And you're like, this is his real home. And I love just the color distinction from blue to orange and yellow.
Yeah,
it's
greens
this is where
and
Tarzan.
lush.
Yeah, this is where Tarzan actually belongs.
This is where he flourishes.
And I think the lighting was just gorgeous in the flashback scenes with even the lovemaking scene and whatnot, or even the scene when after Tarzan got pummeled and he wakes up in the hospital and sees Jane for the first time. The lighting in that and the close-up shots of during certain scenes. And, that one, or even the fight scene at the end. Cinematography was fantastic, but the lighting was gorgeous as well.
And the movie was shot well. I mean, there's no argument about that.
Stunning.
No argument. It was shot well. Action scenes were filmed well.
Colorful.
Again, 35% Rotten Tomatoes. I don't get it.
No,
Don't get it.
Give it a 55. Give it a 60. I'll accept that.
70, 80. I'll give it a B.
Put it way higher than
I mean, that's my. But at least,
it's got to be higher. I just don't understand. What are you looking for in a Tarzan movie? And I think that it delivers, and I think it's good for all audiences. And hell, if maybe we talked about this a little bit with BFG, maybe if it inspires a kid to go get the Edgar Rice Burroughs books or something, I mean, he doesn't have a cape and fly or a shield, but he's every bit as strong, and there's a good story here. It's a good popcorn movie that never overstays its welcome. This isn't a 2.5 hour sojourn
No.
Yeah.
It's good. It's just under 2 hours. I saw it in 3D. I think that's what I meant to talk about before, because you had said you didn't see it in 3D. I saw this movie in 3D, and it looked fantastic. It looked great. The action sequences were blurry. I could see perfectly well, sharp and clear what was happening on screen at all time. The depth of field and focus was great. It was a good movie, a very good movie to see on the big screen in that 3D format. So there you go. Those are my parting words.
All right. Well, Marisa, anything to add?
I really enjoyed this film. I probably will buy this when this comes out on DVD. I really enjoyed it. And I think visually it was great. Music was also really well done, too. I think as a story, from like storytelling, visually, how they executed it, I think it was just so well blended and all the pieces fit. And they did it so well, and things like we got character arcs, we got story completions, and that's what you want in films. And I think this movie was firing on all cylinders.
I think it was a pleasant surprise for me. Hopefully, it was a pleasant surprise for you. And if you have yet to see it, hopefully this is a stamp of approval to go see it, because it is good. It's worth checking out at the very least. It's a lot of fun, and it offers something different. Honestly, the first half of the year was a superhero movie after superhero movie, and it's just too much. This is something different, and it's a world that, yes, we've seen The Jungle before and whatnot, but this offered a different viewpoint into it, different stakes, and very much enjoyable. So, let us know your comments and
let us know.
Happy to talk with you, whatever you guys want to talk about more about this movie, whatever plot lines that you enjoyed, because there were so many.
Yeah.
And I thought the ending was just fantastic, with the animals coming in, and just a great set piece all around.
It really was.
That's where the money went.
Yeah. It's a good summer popcorn movie.
It really is.
So, don't piss off the hippopotamus. That's the moral of the story. In the meantime, at DMovies1701.
Yeah, support me on Twitter. Say hey.
At Serafini TV.
That's right.
And we're at The Popcorn Talk and at Movie Anatomy. Thank you guys for joining us. If this is your first time, hopefully you guys enjoyed enough to tune in to the movies that you've seen. You don't have to keep checking back in every single week, but the movies that you've seen, check in with us. Recently, we just did The Shallows. We did the BFG. We've got Secret Life of Pets coming up. We've got Star Trek Beyond.
Yay!
And Sausage Party and whatever else. We've got tons of stuff. That's only in the coming weeks. So, and in our library, we have over 250 movies. Unfortunately, we don't have any of the other Tarzan movies, but
it's all right.
You know what? We hope to build. So, something to aspire to. In the meantime, we'll see you guys later.
Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.